Meet Adrian Padt, family man, waterman, sportsman, award-winning engineer, inventor, extreme sportsman, fisherman, diver, spear fisherman, kiteboarder, snowboarder, a guy that's just good at everything he does.
Monster waves, been faster than I've ever got in my life.
Adrian is our next contestant in King of Customs. He has custom fitted gasifier to his Chevy pickup truck. So I've come out into the Free State to meet Adrian Padt, or at least to see where he grew up and how this man has all these unbelievable skills where he can fix pretty much anything. He is constantly on the go, organizing, fixing, directing his business.
But the reality is, you know, we've got deadlines to work with. We're a week past the deadline already.
We catch up with Adrian on the family farm in the Orange Free State.
My granddad was quite a handy, hands-on type of guy, and so is my mum, as you've seen. She keeps designing new contraptions for the farm, so I think it runs in my blood.
Mrs. Padt is a legend, you know. She's 80 years old and runs a 7,000 hectare ranch on her own. She's a multi-linguist, you know. She'll be Sotho, shouting out Sotho commands over her cell phone. She's an incredible human being. Loved, feared, respected across the veld here. And that's Adrian's mom, so yeah, you know where the stocky comes from, eh?
My dad collects old cars. Unfortunately, he doesn't fix them, so I've always ending up fixing them. He had 15 old cars. He used to have an old Rolls-Royce 2425, an absolute beauty. He's had quite a few Jaguars and Morris Minors. And
this is a 1963 Mark II Jaguar. It was ordered by British American Tobacco Company, South Africa, and it was meant to drive around their VIPs.
So together with a mate of mine, Patrick Johnson, I've made quite a groovy truck that runs off wood gas. Mad inventors that we are, we enjoy playing with these sort of things, so we thought what better way to learn about this technology than building one ourselves. These gasifying trucks were actually built at the end of the Second World War. There was a global shortage of fuel, diesel and petrol, and it's technology that was developed in the 40s. What we have here is an old Chevy. And as I said, my mate who's now in Australia, Patrick Johnson, this was his old truck, which we converted. As you see, it's not your average truck that you send the wife down to the shop. Here is a gasifier reactor chamber. So this is where we put our fuel, so we can run off wood chip, chunked wood. We get about 40 kilometers for 15 kilograms of wood. Gas comes down on this side, down a down pipe on either end. And from that, it goes to the front of the vehicle and into the air intake. And right in the front, you'll see we've got a few anti-backfire devices. The first few times we fired this truck up, we had a few backfires and we succeeded in blowing the carburetor 3 meters in the air. Gas comes from the macadamia shell or wood gas, comes into this manifold and beneath the carburetor. All right, at the end of combustion, using a gasifier, you end up with this, and this you can then use for a super fertilizer because it's full of porous holes. You inoculate it with bacteria, and that can then become a super fertilizer. In gasification, smoke is fuel. So any smoke that you see in a fire is actually unburned fuel. So that's why in our stoves, we get rid of all the smoke, so we get 98% combustion efficiency. So as you can see behind here, we're busy making the macadamia smoke, and that's the fuel that we're going to run the Chevy on today. So now we've got enough smoke. You can see it's nice and dense, and it starts getting a little yellowish tinge as well. We know we're good to go. So now I'm running off gas. I've turned the petrol pump off. All right, from here, we're going to take you back to Durban in the factory where we make all the macadamia processing equipment. Okay, so I'm Adrian from Rocket Works Dry Mac. This time we're back at the factory. We just were at the farm last week. This is the brains of the entire factory. What we've got here is a PLC that measures and controls all the weights during the process. It also controls all the speeds of the conveyors, and it also controls the sequences of the nuts. It's also got manual override buttons, which you see on the left over here. So in case you want to run individual items separately, you can do that with these buttons. This is the beginning of the process. What we have here is a receiving hopper, and as you can see, they're load cell ready. So this is our first weight process. When the nuts arrive out the field, they're normally a green version of this. So as you can see, it's got a husk on the outside. So when they arrive in the receiving hopper, they still look like this. They go up the elevator over there, and then they fall into what we call a dehusker. Here we have our dehusker. Very different to what's out there in the industry. Our dehusker actually runs with rubber actuator paddles rather than metallic ones or metallic chains. So there's very little damage done to the nut. This dehusker will do up to 3 tons of nut and shell per hour. So after the nuts have been dehusked, there's a whole variety of different sizes. So what we've got here is a sorter grader. Eliminates any of the smalls, and once the smalls are removed, the nuts will continue onto a sorting conveyor over here, and any that might not have been dehusked will then be returned into the hopper for dehusking again. Okay, so after the sorter sizer and the sorting table, it'll then continue into a water bath, which effectively removes the previous season's nuts. It then flows up a conveyor, and the excess water is removed via an air knife. It then goes up another conveyor and into the dryer. One of the magics about dry mac is that we use what's called a heat pump to dry. And effectively a heat pump is like an air conditioning system, but instead of just using one of the sides, either the cold side or the hot side, we use both. What this effectively does is it gives us 7 heat units for 1 kilowatt of energy. So what that effectively means is that we were able to save 7 times the electricity. So typically for 24 tons of nuts in a week's worth of drying with an electrical element, it would cost you around about 7,000 Rand. Whereas here, we can do it for 1,000 Rand. Once the nuts have gone through the water bath, they enter into a batch hopper, which effectively weighs the nuts in batches of 25 kilos. It then discharges up this elevator and then enters the dryer here on my right-hand side. The dryer is divided up into 6 compartments. Each compartment holds 4 tons of dry nut and shell. It'll typically sit in the dryer for 7 days until it's dry. Once all the moisture is removed down to about 8%, we allow the nuts to come out onto the bottom conveyor, and we do the final sorting. After the nuts have been finally sorted, they need to be graded. So what we have here was designed by our top design engineer, Shannon. Compact little unit. Most industry standards are double the length of this, but effectively we've got 5 different sizes here. In the macadamia industry, you get paid to the size and quality. So over here we've got a very easy way to grade them by size and hence get a maximum value, and onto a final sorting conveyor here. You'll effectively be able to identify any of the insect damage and any damaged nuts which are clearly visible after drying.
So if you dig what Adrian's about, go give him a thumbs up on Facebook.